Chapter 1. Light from the early morning sun crept across her bedroom floor, edging ever slowly forward towards the bed. Renee lay there, half awake, half asleep, trapped in that space where nightmares live. It was here she saw them. All the faces of all the people she had killed. There were so many of them, she had forgotten most of their names. Men, women, young, old, they were all there waiting for her. And they all asked the same question. Why? She had only one answer for them. That's my job. Some faceless person somewhere deposited money in my bank account, paying for me to kill you. Of all the faces, she always came back to one old man. She remembered his name, Charles or Chuck, as he called himself. She spent weeks following him to learn his routine and to develop her plan of where and when she would kill him. She never knew why the people paid her to kill her targets. It wasn't important for her to know. Hers was to kill, silently and efficiently, and to leave no trace behind her. Chuck reminded her so much of her father Marcel. A simple man, who never did anything to anybody. But someone had paid her to kill Chuck, and that's what she had to do. She chose the park, where, every morning, Chuck would take his small black and white spaniel. He'd sit on the same bench and watch as the spaniel would run and chase the squirrels around the trees. She thought she could see the dog smile, it always appeared to be so happy. In her car, parked nearly a mile away, she took aim through her scope, then saw the red blood begin to streak down the old man's face. It was a perfect kill shot. She remembered she had stayed longer than she should have to watch the dog. It haunted her now, wondering what had happened to the spaniel when it discovered its master was no longer there. Finally awake, she glanced at her phone, 5:30. Too late to try to go back to sleep and far too early to get out of bed. She reached under her pillow to find comfort from the coolness of her gun. Chapter 2. Earlier, August 20th. Newly elected Montgomery County District Attorney, Peter Larchey, had found it easier to campaign on a platform to clean out organized crime operating in his county than to actually make it happen. His first action, immediately after being sworn in, was to call a team meeting with all of his staff from across the county. During the election run, when he was out on the campaign trail, leading rallies and doing the obligatory, glad-handing 4 votes, he had made it a point to personally meet with each and every one of the 21 county Justice Department staff. Some, young like him, he knew from law school and their preliminary legal practices. Others, older, set in their ways, showed signs of not being too eager to rock the boat. A mixture of personalities he had to turn from, each one having their own individual agendas, into one cohesive team. They needed to be all focused on the single goal of ridding the county of organized corruption. Peter looked out at his audience as he stood at the front of the room. 21 county employees, a handful of assistant DAs, a few county clerks, all milling about, swigging coffee and chatting. From the din of noise that filled the room, he could pick out, "How's the family?" I couldn't believe it when he missed that 6-inch putt. "No, I didn't invest with them, I put my money in bonds." He checked his watch, it was approaching 10 a.m. If he could pull this together and get started, he'd have 2 solid hours before anyone would start thinking about what was for lunch. "All right. Since everyone has had their coffee, if you can find a seat, we can get underway," Peter called out from the front of the room. It took time for the small clusters to break up and settle in. "As you know, I was elected on a platform of eliminating organized crime from our county. And yes, I know most of you, who have been around for a number of years, have heard similar promises before. But this time it's going to be different." With that phrase, an audible groan could be heard rising from the group. "This time, I've done my homework. For the past year, leading up to the election, I've had a team of researchers, lawyers, and forensic accountants looking into the condition of organized crime operating right here under our collective noses. Copies of their reports will be given to each of you to examine. Right now, I'd like to take a minute to highlight a few of the major findings." "Can you put up the first slide please, Karen?" he asked his assistant. And if someone at the back can hit the lights. In the darkened room, the large screen at the front began to glow. A multicolored map of the county shone out. As you can see, it's no surprise that the bulk of criminal activity is centered around our three major cities. Next slide, Karen. And on it went. Slide after slide, peeled the onion down. And this last slide shows the two largest money makers for the criminals in our county. First are drugs. We have been fighting this plague for years with little success. Second is the business of money laundering, Ponzi schemes, leading to loan sharking and blackmail. This is the activity we're going to strike out at and eliminate, he said with conviction. He paused a moment to let the group ponder what they had just learned. My team and I have developed a strategy to go head on after these lowlives. A plan that involves each and every one of you. I know a number of us come from different sides of the political aisle, but if we are going to have a meaningful impact, we need to be united with a common focus. Pete's time of beating the bushes during his election campaign had proved to be a solid training ground for giving rousing speeches. A few of the more senior members of his audience recognized the tactic and sat back a little further in their chairs. When we break for lunch, he snuck a quick glance at his watch. You'll find the dining area has been divided up into smaller targeted groups. Each table will have one of my team members to help lead you through the plan for your area. Of course, later this afternoon, I'll be available to meet with anyone, one-on-one, if you have any questions or concerns. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll say thank you and lunch is now ready. Filing into the adjoining room, the group was met with 4 spaced tables, each seat marked with a placement card. The presence of a team leader, holding a stack of papers, left little doubt this was expected to be a working lunch. During the afternoon, District Attorney Larchie dealt with the expected stream of concerned county employees. One by one, he took the time to listen to their issues. Peter knew that the success of his plan was riding on the backs of these individuals. He had to get them on board, and to do that, he knew he had to first listen. Let them get their issues off their chests. As each one talked, Peter took notes. When the majority of the participants left, Peter felt he was making headway towards his unified, focused approach. The last to grace his door was the one he was waiting for. "Come on in, Malcolm. I was hoping you'd be one of the ones to stop in. In all honesty, if you hadn't, I'd be driving up to your office in the morning." Malcolm Richards was the controller for the largest city in Montgomery County. In the state, Montgomery County wasn't the largest county by area, but it certainly was by population. "Pete, I have a real problem with what you are directing my office to do. It's one thing, and I admit, an admirable thing, to launch an all-out push against organized crime. But we can't charge forward throwing accusations around without solid proof." Peter was ready for this. "You must trust me. In the report it clearly points out your city as being the prime hot spot in the county. My team has worked hard to put together all the evidence needed to back up the approach I want you to take." Malcolm wasn't convinced. There was more than trust involved. "You want my office to go forward towards laying charges of extortion, kickbacks, and bribery against 5 of our city employees. And you want me to do this based on trust." "Exactly. Frank Asher is the kingpin of organized crime in your county, and these people have been instrumental in giving him a foothold in the city's government." "I agree, but there are rules we have to follow. You of all people should know that. Asher and his company, Asher Investments, can afford to be represented by some pretty expensive law firms. Firms that are likely to be embedded so deep in the elite and political workings of this state, I'd end up being crucified if I attacked them. I mean, it's great you just got elected, but pretty soon I'm going to be up against an election myself, and I can't afford to piss off the movers and shakers of this state." While the human part of him could feel a touch of empathy for Malcolm, the lawyer part of him had a mission he was determined to accomplish. "Malcolm, what I haven't told you yet will make things easier for you. For some time now, my team has been having secret meetings with all the municipal leaders in our county. I apologize for not letting you know what was going on, but we couldn't take a chance of word getting out until we were ready to launch. He pulled an array of files from his desk and handed them over to Malcolm as he continued to talk. We've gone through every contract, every bid, every bank account over the last 5 years with a fine-tooth comb. He gave Malcolm a little time to glance through the files. It's all in there. You want clear and solid proof. Well, you're holding it in your hands. The controller couldn't lift his eyes from the revealing data that had been pulled together. Your team was able to gather all this without anyone raising an eyebrow. It wasn't easy. We quickly learned among the different operating groups, for example, city planning, building permits, workplace inspections, financial offices, etc., those people who we could trust. With their help, we were able to identify the bad apples who were taking kickbacks. Then, and here's the good part, it is my hope that by applying pressure to those people, and promising immunity from prosecution, we will be able to obtain information. Information that will lead to us having signed, sealed, and delivered enough evidence to cut the heads off the whole Asher organization. Stopping to let the message sink in. Are you with me so far? Malcolm was amazed. If what I see here is true, my office can bring charges first thing tomorrow. Excellent. And after you lay your charges, I'd like to hold a press conference. It's not only important to be doing things, but also to be seen to be doing things. It'll shake Asher and his lawyers up. Plus it'll be good press for your re-election. And remember, this is only the first wave. Once you get active, my office is going to be moving forward across the whole county. Between us, we'll have Mr. Frank Asher and his legal team so bottled up, they won't know what hit them.